Before we jump into any next steps, I'm going to be teaching you guys about the principles of design. This will help you with drawing your items and will also help you narrow down your list if you haven't come to a complete final list yet. Design is defined as the composition of an artwork. You will all be intentionally arranging elements of art in order to create a composition. Elements such as color, value, texture, shape, and line will all be applied to these drawings. All of those elements play a role in design. With the use of those elements, you can play with contrast, proportion, unity, balance, and emphasis. These are the principles of design. Contrast is the direct comparison of opposite effects. For example, light and dark colors, smooth and rough textures, large or small shapes. Contrast is typically used to create visual interest and often makes the atmosphere of your design a bit more dramatic. Proportion describes size, location, or amount of one element in your design. Proportion has a lot to do with the overall harmony of your piece and how people perceive it. It also ties directly with emphasis. Emphasis is where the viewer's eye goes first when looking at a piece of art. By blowing up the proportion of one element of your design, you create emphasis. For example, if I was drawing my plant and I decided to make the pot really small and the leaves really big, the viewer's eye would go to the leaves before they went to the pot. Unity is another principle of design. This is an important one to keep in mind when coming up with the designs of your pins. Unity is a measure of how the different elements included in a design work together. When creating multiple works that relate to one theme, such as our theme of humans and the environment, unity plays a large role in making these pieces cohesive. Your pins will already have a sense of unity because they will all be items that you have a positive connection with. However, that unity can be pushed even further. For example, if you were to apply the same color palette to all of your pins, the repetition of colors would make the set of pins more cohesive. The next principle of design that I'll be introducing is balance. Balance is defined as the distribution of visual weight of objects, colors, texture, and space. Think of your design as a scale. The elements in it should make it balanced. The design should feel stable. There are three main types of balance: symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. Symmetrical balance is when the elements used on one side of your design are similar to those on the other side. Asymmetrical balance is when the sides are different but still look balanced. In radial balance, the elements are arranged around the central point. Now I'll be walking you through the process of sketching out my pin designs. Beginning with coffee, the original idea that came into mind was a small rounded espresso cup. Then I thought I would try out some other mug shapes to see what I like best. A larger, more rectangular shape is more similar to the mugs that I use at home, so that was my second idea. Next, I thought I would also draw out my reusable iced coffee cup. When looking at the three designs I came up with, I decided that I preferred the big mug to the espresso cup, and I thought that the reusable mug would be too hard to cut out of clay. Though the middle mug was my favorite, I thought the mug on its own was a little too plain, so I thought maybe I could give it a bit more character through a logo or other design choices. Once I was happy with the shape, I added a logo, and I said Joe, like a cup of Joe, but I wasn't too thrilled about how it came out. So instead, I decided maybe I could make it more animated, personify it by giving it a little cute face. So at this point, I was officially happy with how the design came out, and I started thinking about my color palette, which I was leaning into pastels, and these were the colors I was sort of debating between for the mug. When it came to designing the sun, I had a difficult time with its shape. I wanted to put emphasis on the sun's rays, but that could be difficult to cut out of clay. So I came up with the idea of maybe cutting out a circle and doing most of the design work in my painting. When drawing these designs, however, I didn't love the amount of white space that you would be seeing in the final product. So I came up with the design of a sun with radiating light beams coming off of it with a shape that I ended up liking more than the other two. Though I really liked my first design, I just didn't want to be cutting out those small shapes. Therefore, I landed on that third design. Leaning into that cartoon style and the pastel color palette applied to my first drawing, I thought I would do the same in this. When looking at my plant, the pot seems to take up more room than the leaves do. However, I wanted the leaves to take up more space than the pot in my drawing, or at least have them be about equal. First drawing steps I took were a small pot and a larger pot so I could compare two designs. I found myself getting kind of stuck when looking at my plant because that leaf coming off to the side and all those little guys kind of hanging off, I didn't really know how I would include those, so I decided to just cancel them altogether and stick to the leaves on the right side. If one of the objects that you're designing has a difficult shape, such as my plant, you can always take a picture of it and trace the outside to help you land on a design. This really helped me with the leaves. It helped me kind of imagine what I was going to do with that left space that I was sort of redesigning myself. If it makes more sense for you to draw each of the individual leaves or the inside of your difficult shape and then land on an outside shape, that makes total sense as well. You can always start with something more detailed such as this and then do an outline from there. The pot of my plant was already a pastel green, so I really got to stick to its natural colors for this design. Art has definitely been occupying my time while in quarantine, but I didn't know what art tools I wanted to be using for my pin design, so I went ahead and did a few. I started with a pencil, and then I moved into a paintbrush, and I even tried doing a acrylic bottle of paint as one of my designs, but realized once I drew the acrylic paint that could kind of be anything, so I ended up having to spell out paint, and I wasn't crazy about how it looked. Then I remembered I have a heavily used paint palette that I could be drawing, so I decided to try that out. This one took some trial and error with shape because to me it kind of looked like Pac-Man or some weird character, so I ended up just kind of rounding it out, and I landed on this shape with some scattered paint across it. This design felt like it made the most sense for what I've been doing in my time in quarantine, so I canceled out that bottle of paint, I canceled out that brush, and even though that pencil is so cute, it's thin, it's got a lot of small details, so I landed on the palette. Another huge factor in me choosing this design over the other ones is that the color palette was basically laid out for me. I decided I was just going to reuse colors that I used in my other pins right on this palette as if I used it to paint those other pins, and that ties really well into Unity. The next step is to redraw those sketches on paper the size that you want the pin to be. You can scale the size down or you can scale the size up. Just know that if you scale the size up, they get a bit heavier because they are made out of clay. So if you were to put them on a shirt or something that's a thin fabric, they may lean forward. This step is a great opportunity to finalize those sketches that you had. You can rework details and make sure that you really like that outlining shape. Once you've finished up those drawings and you have a final pin idea, go ahead and cut those out. You can use scissors or an X-Acto knife, either one works, but just make sure you're cutting carefully because those are the shapes that you will be applying directly to the clay.